Hi, this is just a quick note to say that although we tackle the inherent racism of Police Academy, we recorded the episode a couple of months before the murder of George Floyd, the recent Black Lives Matter protests, and calls to defund the police, so it's missing some current context that we would certainly discuss if recorded today, and further cement why nobody needs to watch Police Academy in 2020. In the episode description, you'll find links to ways we can all help Black Lives Matter, as well as a list of resources to aid anti-racism in the UK. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to Methods Unsound presents Moving On, a 5-part mini-series on the films we used to love that now make us cringe. My name is Christopher Ratcliffe, one of the founders and writers of Methods Unsound, a semi-dormant pop culture website that we've decided to resurrect for this period of extended quarantine. Joining me from the comfort of their own homes via various shaky internet connections are 4 other members of the Methods Unsound team. Let me introduce them all to you. First of all, Matt Owen. Hi, Matt. What have you been enjoying in the week since we last spoke?
Hello. Well, clearly I've been enjoying this week's movie on repeat every single night since we last spoke. But
you are not okay.
We've watched some good stuff this week. Actually, we've been in a lot. We've kind of got a.
You don't fucking say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've kind of got we've got a flow to it now. So we start off with like a Disney Plus, like a classic. So I recently watched Basil, the Great Mouse Detective. That was let me know. Then we move on to something a bit, I watched Ladies in Black recently, which was lovely. It's just a very nice sort of coming of age film set in Australia in the 50s. That was nice. I watched Leprechaun. And I watched porno as well.
A porno.
Not actual porn. Yeah.
Hang on.
Not the.
You've got the
Shudder movie porno. Yeah, I sat down with my wife.
We just thought you'd got a disease where you lost all your definitive articles.
It's all right. It's fine. But
I'll have to. That's a glowing recommendation.
But I would say We Summon the Darkness was quite good. It was kind of a bit of a sort of heavy metal devil worshipper horror comedy, and it was quite good
I've
fun.
been looking forward to that one.
So it's
cool.
it was they evened each other out basically.
Cool. Joachim Farncombe, how are you?
Good day. Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks very much. Hey, what have you been enjoying this week?
So this whole thing about having loads of time on my hands is a total myth, and I have not watched anything particularly new. Oh, that's not true. I've been watching the morning show on Apple TV, which is fine. Yeah, it's a little bit over. Everyone's got iPhones.
Well, we all have iPhones, Joe.
Yeah, it looks great. It looks beautiful, but it doesn't really add up to some of its parts. It's pretty ponderous.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay, Catherine.
Hi there.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to the recording. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad. Thanks very much for
asking. I forgot this wasn't.
Have you
a
watched anything
conversation.
decent?
This is a podcast.
No, it's fine. No, this podcast is a conversation.
Okay, cool. I was just literally trying to remember if I've watched anything other than Game of Thrones and Parks and Rec reruns. I watched Rocketman quite recently, and I remembered that I don't really like watching musicals, but I think it was pretty good as far as they go. I was actually pretty impressed. I remember a lot of plaudits coming around for the Queen version, one about Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody. I was pretty impressed that Taron did all of his own singing and whatnot, so that was quite fun. I finally saw Spider-Man Far From Home. I thought it was fine. It was funny to see Jake Gyllenhaal just not really want to be there. But I think the most thing about it of all was like the last 2 minutes where he's flying around New York. I was like, God, I really want to see Spider-Man swinging around New York, and I'm really disappointed that I never get to see that anymore.
You reminded me. I saw Jakey boy in Prince of Persia this week.
Oh wow, you're
And,
really
that was
digging
fantastic.
into the
Yeah.
fucking pile here, aren't you?
Last week you watched The Green Lantern.
Christ alive.
I was just going to say, did you like Bohemian Rhapsody?
I haven't actually seen it, but I know that he mimes it all. That was my
Okay.
that was my only comment on Bohemian Rhapsody.
It got a lot of, like you said, it got a lot of plaudits, but I thought it was a bit shit.
Yeah, I just like out of the two, I think if one of you's miming and the other one's actually going to quite a lot of lengths to get the recreation right.
I thought that Rami Malek's teeth put in a good performance.
Yeah, well, as always, cheekbones as well. They were at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, and the last thing is I finally managed to make my wife watch all of the Lord of the Rings films, and it was great. She sobbed throughout the last one, and then she was like, "Can I read the books?" And I was like, "It's finally happened. I've transcended a place where I can get my wife to read Lord of the Rings," and then I couldn't find the first book, so that's that for now.
Oh, God.
It's never going to read them.
The audio version.
I'll just go to the bookshop.
iPlayer or something.
Oh, really?
I
was just thinking, like, the brief window of her enthusiasm closed up like a.
I mean, and reading the first book, you get all those beautiful Tom Bombadil songs and things.
Gotta have all the Bombadil
everyone
songs.
loves, right?
Yeah.
It's the best bit.
I mean, when she was like, it takes them ages to leave the Shire, and I was like, in the book, it actually takes them about 17 years to leave the Shire, so this is quite fast, actually.
And yet she still wants to read the book.
I didn't actually tell her, I just thought it.
Finally, Ted Wilkes, what have you been watching over the last week?
So I have had a week of two extremes. I watched Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Oh man, is it good?
Which is it is beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's all very. It's obviously discussing kind of art and paintings and such. So it has to look beautiful. But every single frame is gorgeous, and it's all kind of practical lighting. There's no kind of artificial light at all. So all the flickering candle flames and the beautiful. I can imagine it's shot in kind of this beautiful coastal town in France. It's just it's perfect. It's lovely. I mean, there's reading, but it's really gorgeous.
More importantly,
looking forward to that one.
Super gay. So.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of gay. Yeah. But yeah, it's phenomenal. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. And then at the other extreme, I watched The Nest.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the film that we'd picked this week.
Yeah, to be fair, that's at the other end as well.
I was going to bring you crashing back down to earth by saying,
yeah.
Cool.
No, this week's film's all naturally lit as well.
Feels that way.
But yeah, if you want kind of a thriller in inverted commas, a British thriller on the up in the mountains of Scotland and such, and about surrogacy, and it has quite a good depiction of this middle class family. Are they exploiting this working class girl by making them a surrogate? And I think it's quite an interesting little thrillery. I think it was 5 parts, so you can get through it in an evening if you fancy.
But each of those 5 parts are 70 pages long.
Yeah. How about you, Christopher? What have you been watching?
Oh my God! Oh, the host has become the guest. Mainly, my children crying because they have to go to bed or they have to stop eating chocolate. But in the brief minutes that I have, I'm really enjoying. So Amazon Prime have released. They haven't released. Sorry, they've just acquired a series called Documentary Now, which is a comedy by Bill Hader and Fred Armisen, and each episode is a different. They take a different classic documentary, from Grey Gardens to The Last Waltz to the documentary about the Clinton campaign, various other very, very important tentpole documentaries, and they basically recreate them, but in a comedic and twisty way. So the first episode is Grey Gardens, and they do completely pitch perfect impressions of Big and Little Edie, who are the kind of very odd, eccentric ladies who live together in a dilapidated old house. They're like relatives of Jackie Onassis, and they're very odd. But it's very funny, and it takes a turn in the final third, which is terrifying. Really quite terrifying. So yeah, I've loved that, and yeah, that's about it really. So, in this mini podcast series, which we've subtitled Moving On, the team will take it in turns to pick a film they used to love for a brief period of time, but they've now grown out of. The other guests will then pick an element of the film that they find interesting, shameful, or weird, and basically make the person who picked the film hate themselves for bringing it to everyone's attention. Then at the end, we'll try to pick one thing each that we like about the film, and we'll rate the film out of 10, and definitively conclude whether there's anything redeemable in its content, or whether it should be thrown on the bonfire along with Steve Gutenberg's denim cutoffs and bun in the oven crop top. This week, it's Matt Owen's turn to pick the film. Matt, would you like to introduce your film and explain why you liked it at the time and why you two have now sadly grown apart?
I would love to. My pick of the week is one of the highest performing comedies of 1984, bringing in 81 million domestic on a $4 million budget, if you can believe it. It's the original Police Academy. It's a bit of a weird one for me, because I think when I suggested it, I sort of said it was a film I loved as a kid, and I can remember that like my grandparents were a bit ahead of the curve with technology, so they were like one of the first families on the estate with a VHS, and this was one of the films that just got rented again and again and again. And I mean, at the time I was about 8 years old, probably. So basically, unnecessary boobs and fart jokes were definitely my bag at the time, baby. So, and in some ways they are now as well. Certainly the fart jokes.
The fart notes.
The fart notes. That's my new a cappella combo I've put together. I don't know, rewatching it, it's sort of, I mean, I can forgive movies quite a lot if you watch them as a product of their time, but I think it's pretty relentless, a lot of the stuff in this. It's got probably every form of bigotry you can think of going, and it's pretty relentless, which makes it hard to enjoy the silliness as well. I was sort of thinking, it, like, in its defense, I think, like, in the internal world of the movie, those characteristics, bigotry is like ascribed to the bad guys. But
unless it's misogyny,
so,
in which case everyone's allowed to go.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, like, well, I'm sort of thinking its approach. It's like it made me think of like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which I don't think you could ever say is like a mean-spirited movie, but it does have like slurs in it that are very of their time, and it's very. I feel like it's trying to come from not a mean-spirited place, but some of the jokes are like, "Hey, big black dude can like flowers, ha ha ha," and also like there's like at least 2 rapes in this, right?
Yeah.
There's the scene with Callahan, there's the blowjob scene. But, I mean, on the other hand, there's also someone gets their head stuck up a horse's bum, and, there's a silly bit with a shaver, which actually did make me giggle when he's doing that kind of stupid noises in the mirror. And I think those kind of very childish, very silly bits are still kind of funny in their own right, in a very small boy sense of humor way. But the rest of it, it's just it's just aged to the point where it's impossible to ignore a lot of those things throughout it, and it just becomes distasteful at the expense of the rest of it, basically.
Son, Where did you get this gun?
My mom gave it to me.
Oh, can I borrow it for a little while?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm absolutely reeling, and I may never get over the fact that you've just compared this to Bill and Ted. My little heart's breaking it up.
No, the point that
No,
Matt's
I
trying to
know,
raise is that Bill and Ted, like, quite flippantly says the F
Yeah.
word, and so does this, and that's
Still angry though.
It's sadly so.
Back off, Bill and Ted.
So yeah, I think that's like. I said this off mic, but like it's going to be tough to sort of like get over the fact that there's a massive racist, sexist, and homophobic elephant in the room. And he's a total jerk. Like when I was making notes on it, I started a list called gross stuff, which far outweighed the maybe two things that I had in the non-gross stuff list. But like it's interesting as well, because like the first half an hour lulled me into this false sense of hope. Like it was all right, apart from the fact that, the jokes, the vast majority of jokes were not landing. Like it has like a pretty diverse cast, and it appears to be trying to tackle institutionalized racism. Like you said, Matt, the bad guys are the ones that are racist, but then every non-white character is either a stereotype or just isn't fleshed out beyond one single joke, and it's just really sad. And
that's kind of part of it as well, isn't it? Is the fact that they're a group of wacky misfits, and by that it means they're black or a woman.
Female.
Yeah.
And that's why they're, some of them are wacky misfits.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think the bad far outweighs the scant amount of good. But is there any reason why anyone in the 21st century should watch Police Academy? Is there any value to it? There are plenty of cultural artifacts that are like problematic, and they have their defenders. But is this even worth defending?
I think going back to what I said originally is like, of how you can excuse things if you view it as like an artifact, I suppose. In some ways, it's quite interesting because I think people forget how huge a success the film was at the time. Because like Ghostbusters came out that year as well, and it did nearly as well as Ghostbusters.
Well, here's the list of films that came out in 1984. The other comedy films in 1984. Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Beverly Hills Cop, Splash, and This Is Spinal Tap. All like very sophisticated, well, comparatively sophisticated.
No, I watched Splash this morning, so I wouldn't...
But like, and sort of timeless, and also I would, not as nearly remotely problematic. And yet Police Academy beat all of those?
I think that you make a really good point about the kind of the beginning, the Act 1, because it is quite a tight Act 1. It establishes our characters really effectively and shows us, their weakness or their special skill, which at the moment is not quite fully fleshed out, and they don't understand it yet. And that's ultimately going to be the thing that makes them the good cop at the end. So as kind of like the structure of a gang show, I think that's quite interesting, because it very economically does that. There's I forget her name, but the female cop who she can't shout. We know at the end, she's going to find her voice. Steve Guttenberg, he just doesn't care, and he's a bit of a loose cannon. But that's ultimately the things that gives him kind of the strength to be a good cop. Tackleberry's just nuts, and I think he deserves his own half-hour, sitcom show. But that's my redeeming thing for it.
Well, you've gone into the redeeming things far too early, Ted.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I will say I don't think. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think it's necessarily a bad movie in the way that its legacy would imply. Because some of the later Police Academy films are total stinkers.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think this is terrible, even though it's got a vaguely unknown director at the time, and an untried cast, and a minuscule budget, and all that kind of stuff. It still comes together quite well at times.
If anyone isn't aware that might be listening to this, there were 6 sequels to the Police Academy films, and an animated TV show, and a real live-action TV show, which is which is quite the legacy. There's an interesting article that Den of Geek did, which they ranked the Police Academy films, and the first one was ranked number 3, and I think Police Academy 3 was ranked number 1, but they still caveated it with the fact that Police Academy 3 is still only a 3-star film. It's the best one.
I like the fact that Steve Gutenberg didn't actually get around to quitting the franchise until like, number 5 or something. Like,
It's impressive.
I mean, if we're going back and trying to move away from the redeeming and more down to like, let's start with what's really bad about it. Not to be the person that just comes in and shits on all the movies you like, but like, I don't think I laughed. I mean, like, you look back at some films that are like problematic and they have this, and maybe it's just like not my thing, or I'm too far away from like a 14-year-old boy or whatever. But like, I think I almost laughed when he said Johnson's as far as the eye can see.
Back in the old days, there were Johnsons as far as the eye could see.
And what a lovely sight it was.
And that was in the first 20 minutes or something, and then that was kind of it for me.
There's that amazing Simpsons sketch where Homer's like, "Oh, Bart, I took you to all those films. Do you think we went to laugh? Because no one was doing it." Like,
Darling, how could you? Haven't you learned anything from that guy who gives those sermons at church? Captain what's his name? We live in a society of laws. Why do you think I took you to all those Police Academy movies? For fun? Well, I didn't hear anybody laughing. Did you? Except at that guy who made sound effects. Hog, hog. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Stay out of my booze.
Well, that's what I was going to say, actually, is, I mean, I know I'm a little bit younger than some of the guys in the room, as it were. But, like, my only knowledge of Police Academy is literally references, mostly from the like, Simpsons Futurama area. Like, I'd never seen it at the time, and I didn't really know anything about it beyond, like, a Futurama episode and various, like, gags in The Simpsons, if you know what I mean. But it just wasn't very funny.
Did you find it more? Were you quite horrified by it though? Did you think that? Because I think it's what I think is quite shocking is the fact that it's such a mainstream film, and like later sequels are all like PGs.
Yeah.
And I watched it as a kid, I watched Police Academy loads when I was a kid. The fact, like, I think I first became aware of what a blowjob was because of Police Academy 1.
I think I read somewhere that in my extensive research that they put in the shower scene because so they could get an R rating, because they thought that would make it play better. Basically, that would attract an audience of I don't know, older teenage, young adult guys, basically.
There's definitely a thing where like probably didn't laugh because like my heart immediately hardened to it like as soon as it started to really like offend me, which was a little bit, as soon as he starts like that's the other thing is like these films that we're talking about, they always have this shitty main guy who's shitty, and where he's the good guy, and he starts being a creep, and then he's like drinking a beer outside the shower and stuff, and you're just like, my heart just closed down. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna laugh at this because I hate it.
Chris, did you always think that if you were about to deliver a speech, you were like, "Oh, it's blowjob time"?
No, I was about 8.
Oh, right, okay, fair.
Why were you delivering a speech when you were 8? What was
I was a very good 8-year-old. That I just snuck into Police Academy with my fake beard.
Oh, I do have one plus point for it, I think. What a theme song.
Oh, that was my one thing.
And they don't make credit sequences like that anymore, do they?
Well, they did in Animal House, but yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah, fine. Okay.
Which this film basically is.
Sorry. Okay. So, just to move on slightly, and touching on what I just, and what sort of an issue that's been brought up. So, one of the few interesting aspects of Police Academy, watching it as an adult, and again, I haven't watched it since I was a child, is how surprised I am that I watched it so often as a child, and that I was even allowed to. Ted, you mentioned how you felt like it's a kids' movie aimed at adults.
Yeah, I mean, because when I was watching it, I remember watching it as a child as well, and it being a thing that my parents were okay with me watching, even though it is an R-rated and 18 film. I mean, I don't know if maybe the who pays attention to ratings anymore, but at the time, I remember that being like, oh, you can't watch an 18 film, except Police Academy. And I kind of thought about some of the other films I watched as a child, either with permission or without, and it got me thinking that, oh, some films I think are kind of written with the children watching it when they shouldn't be, market in mind almost. So things like, say, Terminator and Street Fighter and potentially stuff like Die Hard. Like, I wanted to watch those films as a kid, and I succeeded in doing so. And I think that there is almost like this weird market at this time of oh, we can get the kids watching it.
I do remember at the video, early video rental shops, they just let you rent anything. We used to go down with pocket money, and you'd be like, oh yeah, Cannibal Ferox, that looks all right, walk out with these things that are in no way suitable for children at all, and they didn't really seem to care. But
I think I felt that only a child would find this funny, and yet it's so tacitly not aimed at children because of like its content and how just not how well, it is offensive, but like it's got so much like adult orientated material in it, and it probably speaks to the fact that all the remaining sequels were PG and were specifically aimed at kids. But yeah, I just found it quite.
The interesting thing is that because it's kind of set up as a spoof movie, but then what is it spoofing?
I was just thinking, like, I was trying to think of an equivalent from when I was a kid that I would have liked about that time, and the only thing I could come up with, and I'm not sure it's on the right thing, but it's Austin Powers. So I was 10 when that came out, and I loved that movie. And as far as I'm concerned, I haven't watched it since then really, but it was like hilarious. But the really thing about it is it's really parodying like those James Bond movies and stuff, and like you say, Airplane is really parodying something specific, being like, what is Airplane? What is Police Academy riffing on? Like, it's not taking any sort of cliches or anything because there's no precursor to it.
It doesn't really take it kind of borrows tropes from the frat house movie, but I don't even know if that was a thing that would have been spoofed at that time. Like things like Starship Troopers knows the genre, knows what it's sending up. Same with things like Austin Powers, and it's almost like a loving homage. And I think that's why Police Academy gets a bit lost, because it doesn't really know what it's sending up.
It did almost start its own mini genre as well, didn't it? Or less diminishing returns genre. Like you get things like Ski School and stuff like that. Through
the wrong way round, like they took the piss of the thing that didn't exist, and then that just carried on as a theme, but no one knew the tropes or anything.
Yeah, I sadly think that what it ends up doing is like, because like I said, like you start off thinking, oh, this is quite a diverse group of people, and maybe it's saying something interesting, and maybe it's going to be pro affirmative action, but then it just makes an absolute mockery of all of these people, and like everyone's treated as a joke, and actually this sort of ramshackle police force that have come together ends up causing a riot, and it's just. And actually, it lampoons affirmative action and diversity, and it's just really sad, and like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just tasteless and just not funny. But then that's it's fucking Police Academy. Of course, it's tasteless and not funny. Jesus Christ. I tell you what, let's go back to Steve Guttenberg's character, because I was at least. I think because Steve Guttenberg's quite an interesting character, because we basically know him most from a line in a Simpsons song, and it is interesting to think, well, why did he shine so brightly for such a brief period of time, and now he's kind of a punchline. And I was interested in watching him in this to see what the big deal is. And number one, his character is, I can't work out if he's a terrible actor or if he's doing the best with the awful material he has, and it's such a shame that like he probably could be quite charming and quite a nice,
I think he was
a well-rounded character, but he's given like is so misogynistic, and like he says the F word in it, and it's such it's so gross that you're sort of shocked that like this is the main likable character, likable in inverted commas, trying to carry this film and indeed this whole franchise.
I mean, there's definitely a period where he was trying. I think they were trying to position him as like Tom Hanks Part 2. So kind of.
I think that, but they were in the same. They
Dark
were in similar
hair.
films in the 80s, though.
Help me out.
Reasonably symmetrical features. This kind of...
Help me out. What? Just for the person that isn't so like fully immersed in the 80s culture. What else is he in?
He's in Cocoon, Short Circuit. He was in, wasn't he? I think
he was in 3 Men and a Baby as well. Those are sort of quite like 4 major like 80s comedies.
Is he in Earth Girls Are Easy? Or have I? No,
I don't know.
No.
He's one of the men. From
no, he's the baby. Sorry, sorry, Catherine.
I couldn't help making a comparison with I know what his name is. Ted Stryker from Airplane. I don't know the actor's name. But I haven't heard of him since. But Airplane is a million times better movie than this pile of crap. And Robert Hayes, I've never heard of since. I've just looked it up. But what struck me is that the Airplane works. Robert Hayes' character, Ted Stryker, works in that film because the jokes are relentless. And if there's one joke you don't like, there'll be 3 or 4 within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Whereas in Police Academy, it's just so wondrous.
Yeah.
I actually think that Steve Guttenberg might have a flicker of a good acting about him. But the material he's given is so bad. And what the hell is he supposed to do?
It's definitely like Hunt the Joke. Like some of them, it felt like they didn't even bother with punchlines. They're just like, we're just going to set something up, and then it would just cut, and you'd be somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like placeholder dialogue. It feels like this has the cadence of a joke.
Yeah.
We'll just use that for now, and then they just made it to the final.
Are we talking about the film or the podcast now?
Again, it was like another hour and 50 minute film, something like that. Like, could have easily been a lot shorter for a start. It's so slow.
It was an hour and 35.
Yeah, hour and 35.
Hang on, wait. Did you watch the extended cut?
Matt, did you send her the extended cut again?
Was it just me, Matt? Yeah, no one else.
It was the Criterion Collection Director's Edition, I think.
It was 30 extra minutes added by Kevin Smith as an additional.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Right. Is there anything else that anyone would like to get off their chests? Joachim, have you got anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, I could go on a tirade about just how abhorrent it is, but I think we pretty much covered that. I think the one thing that really stuck in the mind is that last gag about it's when Steve Guttenberg and Kim Cattrall are getting it on behind the bandstand or whatever, and the lieutenant comes over and orders them to stop immediately. And as soon as he finds out it's a woman, then it's fine. He actively encourages it. It's just, and that's like the closing thing of the film. I remember it's just, oh god, it's disgusting.
Yeah. Plus those 3 sexual assaults. Don't forget them. 3. It's 3.
As a taller gentleman, I loved Hightower's character. I think that all of these little problems that he has throughout the film. When he gets the uniform and the guy's like, "Oh, this isn't going to fit you," or when he has to learn how to drive and he takes the front seat out. I identified with that. I felt a twinge of pride that a tall guy was doing it for himself. But
I mean, again, that's like his main personality trait, isn't it? They're like, this guy, he's tall. And that's like as far as they stretch the joke.
Also a florist.
He's also a florist, sorry. My bad. I take it back, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I have one thing I would say, actually. So, again, from my knowledge of Police Academy coming from Futurama or Simpsons or whatever, the guy doing the sound effects,
What are you in for? I'll show you.
God damn it, stop that! Oh, no, sir, no, not you.
That's terrific, really. What's your name?
Jones. Larville Jones.
Do you feel like they found that guy and they were like, "Oh, this is brilliant, put him in the movie," and then they were like, "But what do we do?"
I actually know that this is true. They saw him doing a stand-up act and went and offered him a role, and then didn't have anything to do with him, so they just
forgot to write jokes around it.
Decided to write.
You can really tell. So his name's Michael Winslow, isn't it? Sorry.
Yeah.
So Michael Winslow not only was never meant to be in the film and came in after the script had been written and who they forgot to write any jokes for, is the only actor to appear in every single Police Academy film, and also. And bearing in mind that after Gutenberg quit after 4, and the rest of the cast gradually quit after 6 and 7, he stayed the course and even did the ill-fated TV series. So
wow,
kept him in.
Did
work,
they write many
at
jokes?
least.
I was about to say, but did bloke had rent to pay?
It's Homer Simpson's favourite character as well.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to redeemable features. Is there anything even vaguely redeemable? Was there one thing that anyone liked? I know, Teddy, racism, homophobia, and misogyny aside, at least it made you feel better about being tall.
Yes, it did. I feel that the heightism wasn't there, so I'm okay with that.
Okay, Catherine, redeeming feature.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be the buzzkill again, but no, nothing. I hated it.
Fine, Joe.
I think so. This is the really challenging thing, and I like we've done a couple of films. We've done another film. We've reviewed another film on this thing, and I really didn't like that. But I think I prefer Mallrats to this film, which is possibly saying that's a big statement. Like, I don't know whether it's just like that kind of, it's summing up a period of time which was riddled with it's obviously just it's of its time, which was a horribly sexist, misogynistic, and that's the industry that spawned it. It's just really difficult to like anything about it.
Fair enough. I think that's so. If anything, it's put Mallrats into a better light. Great. You know what? I didn't mind. I quite liked the way Mahoney parked that car at the beginning. I thought that was that's what gave me the false hope that maybe this might be okay. And as Matt said, the theme is great and deserves to be in a much better film. And I quite like the shotgun training scene when he's swinging the shotgun around and everyone ducks. But you know what? Again, they're just flukes. They belong in different films. They belong in films that are much, much better and shouldn't just be left in the dust like they should be. So anyway, shall we mark the film out of 10? Yes, we should. Good question. Matt, marks out of 10.
Probably based entirely on nostalgia and comfortableness with some of the quote unquote gags, or at least the quotes. I'm going to give it 3 out of 10.
Ted?
I think I'm going to have to agree with Matt and go for a 3 on this one.
Joachim?
1.
I feel like I spent most of it just thinking I could be watching The Heat. Why aren't I watching The Heat? So it's a 1 from me as well. All right, there we go. Okay. I would just like to end the Police Academy conversation on a quote from Bobcat Goldthwait, who would go on to play Zed in most of the remaining Police Academy films and is a truly funny and talented comedian who I like. While he was a guest on the podcast The Gist, Bobcat Goldthwait said that in 2015, TMZ cornered him on the street and tried to bait him with insulting questions to try to get him to become enraged on camera, as is their wont to do. One of the questions they asked him was, should there be a Police Academy reboot? But instead of becoming enraged, he said that if they did do a reboot, I think they should just reboot it like they did 21 Jump Street and make it a comedy this time.
Oh, shade!
All right. Okay, and the final item on our agenda is what are we going to cover next week on Moving On? And I believe next week's host will be Ted Wilkes. Ted, what are we going to watch?
So yeah, it's my turn to pick the film that I have moved on from, and this particular film is one that I watched in 2003 when it first came out, and it is the swashbuckling Johnny Depp vehicle that is Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Oh, you left us on tenterhooks there.
I know.
And this is just for our own research purposes. This is Pirates of the Caribbean 1.
This is Pirates of the Caribbean #1, based on the ride of the
The
same
theme
name.
park ride, not the movie. Is that what
Yeah.
we're doing?
Yeah, we all have to fly to Disneyland Paris just to go onto the ride. Yeah.
Oh, if I would, I could.
Oh God,
I mean,
can you imagine if they'd let us out? Oh.
So with that, I'd like to thank Matt Owen for bringing Police Academy back into our lives again. I'd also like to thank Ted Wilkes, Catherine Thompson, and Joachim Falcon for joining us tonight. Until next time, this has been Methods Unsound Presents Moving On.